Unfortunately, last year we didn't make it to Worlds, but this time around we are ready to go to the group stages.
的一技能好了吗？先打一个印记，这边杜朗护的过去一个半天飞羽到不到，超不到2个人，是一丝前的小胖往左右边跳掉了 Regulus。
そうですね。やっぱり改めて思ったのはやっぱどのチームもすごく強いなっていうのは今日思いましたね。
Ngày hôm qua thua 2 trận không phải là thất bại hoàn toàn, cho nên ngày hôm nay bọn em sẽ cố gắng hết sức để đánh bại họ.
再走出来找到一个速度的距离，但是马德瑞亚还在距离中在一个 Q 技能想着躲过以后，正面看到了新的拉菲，闪现过去一个倒钩伤害。
Y que aunque seamos una región emergente, tenemos el nivel para estar acá.
希望我们接下来可以复仇 FB， 拿下小组第1。
休停一下，5杀 Pentakill 拿下这一波。
Dün takım olarak güzel bir 5'te 5 yaptık ama bu ilk 5'te 5'imiz değil, devamı da gelecek.
Welcome back to the final day of the Worlds play-in stage. Today we find out which teams from Group C and D advance to the next stage of Worlds and which 2 teams will end their Worlds run here. You can see the stadium heating up, getting ready. A lot of logos, only a couple of those teams going to make it through, and of course the fans excited to be there. Rampage getting ready for their final, or what could be their final day.
Yeah, don't get ahead of yourself. They still have a chance to fight back.
Of course, coming in this, hello everyone, I'm Daniel Dracos, and joining me are the newest additions to my premier PUBG squad. Of course, we have Mark Zimmerman, he feeds. And on the other side, we have the BDD of PUBG, Zach Rusty Pie. Thank you, Rusty, for joining us to carry yet another portion of my life.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here, of course. KDA King himself of PUBG.
There's so much wrong with that intro. There's almost no factual statements in that intro.
Luckily, it's not about your self-confidence, Mark Z. Luckily, today is about the last 4 teams promoting to the play-in elimination stage. And if we pull up the standings, we can see that Fnatic and Chaos Latin Gamers are poised to move on from Group C, with 1907 Fenerbahce and Hong Kong Attitude aiming to do the same in Group D. But Young Generation and Rampage can still shake the standings with our first games of the day. It's going to start with that rematch between Hong Kong Attitude and Rampage, followed by Young Generation hoping to get revenge against Chaos Latin Gamers, with their groups completing their second round robin and all necessary tiebreakers throughout the day. After the seeds from each groups are locked in, stick around after the show for the presentation of the elimination stage draw live from Wuhan. Now, I think one of the big standouts, one of the big surprises in Group A and B, Lion Gaming came up big, but here if we look at Group D, Fenerbahce came out swinging on the first day of play.
Yeah, they actually upset HKA. It's the first time a #1 seed has lost here in the playing stage. So that in and of itself is a huge story, and also the way that they did it. They were down a little bit early game. They turned it on the team fighting stage. They were able to seal away objectives. Everything started clicking.
Yeah, show they can play slow League of Legends and still make it work successfully through the team fights. But the big place we have to look at is Crash. Regarding them in particular, he played outstandingly. He was aggressive. Communication issues may not seem to be a thing because Frozen can do the brunt of that, but it worked out.
Yeah, and when you're coming in with an emergency substitute and everything feels like it could just go wrong when you add a new player to the mix, and that player comes in and steals you 2 Barons back to back to keep you in a game, feels like a pretty, out of anything that could have happened with an emergency substitute, feels like Fenerbahce definitely won out.
Yeah, it feels like if you get on the same way that you kind of play, even close to it before the substitution, it's a great thing. And the fact that he's come in, he's done well in terms of also early game, just pressuring where he needs to, sometimes helping out that bot lane that tends to lose a little bit, but making sure it never gets blown wide open.
Yeah, definitely best case scenario for Fenerbahce as far as they're concerned. Maybe they wanted move here, but it's not the case, and they'll be happy nonetheless.
And I feel like just across the board, we saw pretty solid performances from this team. Thaldrun coming in clutch, Frozen in the mid lane. Of course, the big step up was the AD carry on the bottom side of the map.
I think that's the big thing for a lot of people because he was probably the most criticized member of this team coming into the tournament. And whilst you can see that those were somewhat valid and that he struggles in the laning phase, once he's out of it, he is doing way better than expected.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's been doing surprisingly well in the team fights, gets the pentakill 3v5 without the Koreans even there in the roster, so perhaps they are the secret strength after all. But it's not just him, of course. I look towards the mid lane. I'd say that Null is someone that stood out between games. Sorry, not Null. You know what? I give up.
Frozen?
Frozen. Yeah, Frozen, who's someone that surprisingly didn't step up. That's where I wanted to go with this. The reason that I bring him up is because he's spending so much time communicating with Crash that it all actually makes them come together nicely as a team around that AD carry.
And if we look at it on the opposite side, we look at, hey, these guys are starting to upset the top of their group. One team very close to being upset was Fnatic. Very long, very grueling game, and felt like things just were not going well for them at the start of that.
It wasn't going well, but the one thing that did go well for Fnatic was the bottom lane consistently consistently performing incredibly. Reckless did his absolute best, but so did Jessus, even getting the Rakan and having these crazy engages, crazy performances. I've been super impressed with those two.
Right, but like Dracos was saying, not all sunshine and roses. They did have a big problem in the mid lane. The fact that Caps felt like in Game 2 he went for a little bit of a stylish pick, going for the LeBlanc. I know it's a good champion, but it wasn't necessary in that comp. Ends up backfiring horribly as Null is able to take him to town for most of that game.
And now the question remains, what form of Fnatic are we going to see today? Because we look at Young Generation on the opposite side, Null stepping up huge. You mentioned him earlier. He did not have a great first game. He did not connect in a lot of the mechanical plays, but he looked like a completely different player coming into his second match against Fnatic.
I think that's the big thing is you have to think about maybe nerves are a little bit of a play in them because it was the first game of the day and he just missed a ton of stuff on Syndra. Looked really bad, W's off, stuns off, and then the second day he comes in and smashes one of the best mid laners in Europe. So you have to give him a little bit of credit there and say that hopefully that part of the performance continues.
It's fair to say he found himself a bit more. So, and in tournaments like this, best of ones, all you have to do is show up in that one game and potentially get the victory. And as unfortunate it is for them that they don't get it, we still saw so many good things from them coming into today. They might be able to upset if that improvement continues.
And we had talked a lot yesterday about how top lane was a weakness, and we do have an update. Nocti is now subbing in, the other top laner the Young Generation has, and I know this makes you very happy, Mark C. You're a big Nocti fan.
I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a huge Nocti fan. I just, seeing what we saw in the finals as well as what we saw out of Ren in the first two games, he was clearly the member of the team that was struggling the most, and Nocti can play those tanks, plays that more team-centric style, and it allows them to focus more on letting Null step up and continue to carry.
It feels like maybe they just have to bring him in to reverse sweep with Nocti. There's no way of putting him in first.
How they got here?
Technically, it's going to be 2 losses. They win the tiebreaker, that's 3 in a row.
Hey, they could do it. Could turn it around. And I think this is the issue for Ren, right? We came in, he said, hey, this is the guy that likes to split push. This is the guy that likes to keep the ball rolling. But ultimately, you come onto a stage, you're playing against different players with different styles. Maybe what you're doing in your own region just does not work out when it comes into a player who's normally used to dominating these 1v1s.
I think that's definitely the case because you saw that Renekton game. He had a small advantage but wanted to push it further versus Monterrey, and he just couldn't do it. The Cho'Gath was just too much for him to handle, and that's probably a matchup he's comfortable in his own region, didn't execute it here.
Yeah, for me, it's the carry players that really do struggle coming to the international stage against someone else that plays carries or is playing tanks to a higher level above those expectations. That's where the regional problems can come into play.
And it just feels like tanks, unlike those high-pressure 1-3-1 kind of split pushers, are always just going to have a relevance. And so even if your player maybe not as strong, they can sit back, they can take more of a backseat role, whereas if you're used to this guy carrying games, it does tend to throw a wrench in the works when you are relying on him normally.
Yeah, and he hard committed into the carry role when he was playing the Renekton. It wasn't build one carry item, team fight with the rest of the team. He went Blade of the Ruined King. He fully committed himself to that split push, and it didn't work out in the end, and perhaps that's why Nocti is showing up.
And so are we thinking that this is probably going to be a positive change for the team, or is this still kind of a big question mark on the side of Young Generation?
I think it's a little bit of a question mark just because we already saw 2 very different games between the team. Ren, like we said, was the one consistent member, slightly underperforming. So if you're going to go with that Gragas game plan that they seem to play better with, and Nocti is the tank player, then it seems like the intelligent thing to do is sub him in.
Well, we're going to see how it unfolds, but if you're looking for a way to chip into the world's hype, look no further than the newest editions of the Championship line. And as a reminder, 25% of the proceeds from Championship Ash and the Ward Skin purchases are going to be added to that world's prize pool. An additional 25% is also going to be donated to charity. You can also unlock the Championship Ash Chroma through the World's Mission, which is available through all of Worlds. Personally, I love the Chroma. I think it's fire. We got to see it already. But that's enough from us. We're going to send it over to the casters to get you in the first game of the day. So Pyra and Frosk, take it away.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm Devin Pyrotechnics Young, and of course, it's a 2014 LPL reunion because I'm joined by my BFF, Indiana Frusker in Black.
Yeah, I still can't get away from this guy. I traveled over 9,000 miles, and yet here I am again.
Yep, friendship is magic. Now, team banners are lifted, and the fans are ready for our first game of the day. It is Hong Kong Attitude versus Rampage. So let's kick things off by taking a look at our starting lineups. On the red side for this game, representing the LOL Japan League, it is Rampage. In the top lane, we've got Evie. In the jungle, Tussle. Mid laner, Ramune. Bot lane, Yutori Moyashi. Support Dara. And their coach, 3-4.
And of course, on the blue side, it is going to be Hong Kong Attitude, led by Coach Tabe. In the top lane, it's going to be Riris. In the jungle, it's God Kwai. Mid lane is Mission. Unified in bot and Kai Wing in support.
Yep, mentioned Tabe, the coach. Now, for Hong Kong Attitude, they really got to take care of business here if they want to contest for that top spot. getting upset, not a good way to start if you want to go far at Worlds.
And the thing is, it's about where they need to tighten up, identifying specifically where the weaknesses were. Now, they dominate a lot of the lane phase. They are known as a very lane-dominant team. They say so themselves in the LMS. They're very respected for that. But some of these macro decisions, some of these setups around big objectives, it was the 2 big Baron steals. You know, it didn't have to be a 50-50 Baron against 1907 Fenerbahce. They could have waited for the top creeps to push in on the inhib that they had broken earlier, taken a much smarter play and a much cleaner performance. So HKA, for me, it's about total dominance. They talked about revenge here. No, it goes way past that. They need to prove that they are actually a top 16 team because those are their goals. It's not just to make it into group stage, it's to go the distance.
Yeah, I mean, that's big words for this team, and they definitely have the skill to do it. We've seen their impressive laning performances. That's what the team had focused on pretty much extensively. We heard it from Tabe as well. It was all about getting those solo queue stats up. But if they don't get the wins, you know, they might need a Hong Kong attitude adjustment.
That's absolutely true. I mean, they started the season 2-5. They then ended the back of it 5-2, and a lot of that was because they split their attention. They were trying to grind that solo queue, trying to find these big, you know, mechanical performers. In fact, if you go all the way back to HKA, they've had over 16 players rotating through that roster. They used to have this big kind of a prodigy mid laner in Gear, and they decided to change him up for Mission, you know, coming from Fireball, formerly from TPA, you know, playing behind someone like Toys, and to put Gear on a sideline after the reputation that he was creating in the LMS to pick up Mission, it just goes to show that Tabe had a very clear goal in mind when trying to create this powerhouse that is now the 3rd seed for the LMS.
Well, they definitely need to start putting up those results to go behind the powerhouse. Now, on the other side, I want to flip things around here for you, Frost. How can Rampage exploit those known weaknesses of HKA?
Okay, Rampage, it's been pretty rough for the LJL squad, but I feel like it's all about Tussle in particular. Tussle and Dara, really. Tussle has been known as being more of a versatile jungle. He can play the hard carry, he can play more of the Cinder Hulk, the tank. I feel like the meta is shifting more so into those carry-oriented junglers. We've even seen the likes of a Lee Sin, a lot of Jarvans running around, and I would like to see Tussle step up, especially because if you're gonna hit HKA anywhere where they're weak, it actually is in their jungle pool. God Kwai was formerly an AD carry. He's only played 10 games for jungle. He started in their series against J-Team. They just liked the results that they got, but this isn't actually their starting jungler. That's Gemini, and he's still sitting on the bench, kind of waiting to see if HK need to flex him and need to change up that style. So Tussle, you have the opportunity. You can exploit this guy, but you need to step to the task.
Yeah, maybe put himself on something a little bit more comfortable, as you were saying. On the other side, what's looked like a little bit of comfort has been the AD carry, Yutari Mayashi, but he's not necessarily been unlocked. They've been targeting Dara's champion pool pretty consistently, and I didn't like that Soraka pick.
I mean, I agree with you, but you can kind of see the mentality that they're going for. They have a hyper carry ADC, they pair him up with the Soraka, they're trying to go late game, get the Ardent Sensor. The problem is they didn't get the bridge because they didn't get the performance from that early and mid game to carry over and allow their ADC to be that superstar. So then again, it goes back into focusing on Dara, on Tussle. You guys need to step up, control the early game, control this dominant lane phase from HKA, and then allow your ADC to roll over into mid game, to roll over into late game. But so far, Rampage just simply haven't gotten there.
Yeah, and the draft as well. I mean, I criticized obviously the Soraka, but also they've allowed some things through. We saw the Xayah Rakan coming up when they could have at least picked one away. And honestly, it's not super encouraging to look at the last results Rampage had against Hong Kong Attitude because it kind of just started sliding out of the control very, very early on.
But I want to stay away from the assumption that they just blundered the draft. For all we know, the coaches could have walked out of it and said, yes, we wanted to prioritize the Maokai. Yes, we felt confident enough that we could absorb them in the lane phase, take the Soraka, as opposed to them just being blind to the power of Xayah and Rakan. But we should see how things shift up here as we're now in Champion Select.
All right, Taliyah comes off the board quickly, and it's going to be followed by the Kalista, and instantly no more Cho'Gath available for either top laner, so Hong Kong Attitude on the blue side kicking things off there. And there's a Rakan ban by Rampage.
Yep, so already the adaptation going through. We saw a Unified and Kaiwing really take to with this Xayah and the Rakan. Unified has only played Xayah so far in this tournament. Now, if you look at their big run through the regional qualifiers to even get here, it was more about the Tristana. So even if that Xayah gets pinched, although they do have priority pick, Unified can still, fall back to things like the Tristana, which he's very comfortable on.
Definitely have had a lot of experience on that Hong Kong Attitude side. And Sejuani now banned away. That's been a pretty perennial jungle pick, so we'll see something a little different here. And with the last bans already done, means we get a first pick of the Jarvan locked in.
Okay, so a lot of flex pick coming out here. It can go down into God Kwai's hands. It can go up into the top lane for Riris there. That does mean that the Xayah is open and available to deny from Unified. I talked about his comfort on the Tristana, so maybe Rampage are thinking that it's more worth to fight over the Trist than the Xayah, but so far Unified has looked very comfortable on both champions.
All right, so we might get to see an AD carry locked in on the Rampage side, but we already have the Rek'Sai picked up. So this is still more of the same from Tussle.
And I feel like Rek'Sai is kind of one of the champions that's really rising up in the world's meta right now. A lot of versatility with their build. You can go with the Warriors, previously of the Cinderhulk. There's the Tristana that I was talking about. I'd love to see them lock it in. I think it just offers everything that they want.
Yeah, well, I want to see what they end up pairing support-wise, because this time there's only been one support banned away from Dara, so we'll find out if that changes or if they take it for the last rotation here.
But already the strength that we set up for Rampage, we've already got out of their first 2 picks. We wanted to see a more aggressive jungle pick from Tussle. Rek'Sai certainly offers that, as well as the ability to be that CC bot going late. And then you have the super hyper scaling ADC with the Tristana. So already out of the gate, I like what Rampage are putting together in terms of the team strengths.
But over on the Hong Kong Attitude side, you can see they're building themselves up a little bit more catch. The Syndra already locked in. It's going to be a solid laning phase for Mission, most likely. Now let's see if they end up following through with this Varus for Unified. That's a lot of CC on that team already.
Yeah, you said CC, you said catch. I'm going to call it just straight pick, which means that if Hong Kong Attitude ever suffocate Rampage out of an area, ever get their Syndra ahead and have kill pressure on someone, it is very terrifying to walk into dark corners of the map. So we criticized their Baron setup, their Dragon control yesterday. It was kind of the big catalyst that allowed 1907 Fenerbahce to really punish them. With Syndra and Varus, it becomes that much more easy to control those areas of the map.
And now Rampage, they do end up locking in a support for themselves. So Dara has the Braum. This is a pretty classic combination with the Tristana. You can get that stack up really easy to get stuns off. And this is looking like a much better protection style composition for Yutari Miyashi.
And also, Pirate, you're getting everything that you wanted. You want Dara on a more playmaking support. You want a Tussle on more of an early aggressive jungler. Yutori on that hyper carry. So, like I said, I'm totally happy with Rampage. I feel like they're making the correct adjustments coming into the next day.
See if it continues. Right now, the composition definitely starting to take shape. Now, as we enter the next stage of bans, Shen's off the table, and so is the Corkster.
Corki, of course, has a decent laning phase across from Syndra just because he can itemize into the Hex Drinker, deny a lot of her burst. He's pretty safe there, can move around it. Also just strong against laning, so I like the fact that they're trying to pinch and control that matchup.
Yeah, on Rampage's side, they're going to start banning out a couple of supports. The Lulu, at least, is one, as they already had the Rakan from earlier on. And now LeBlanc's banned away also by Hong Kong Attitude, so Ramane might find himself a little bit forced into something different.
I was just going to bring up the Lucian. Yes, the Corki's been taken away. Cassiopeia has been nerfed, so probably don't want to go towards that matchup, but Lucian still fares very well into Syndra. The ability to relentless pursuit around a lot of her orbs, again, can itemize into that Hex Drinker if he really feels that he's being pinched and needs more of a defensive build, and still has kill pressure there.
Yeah, and Ramane's already faced off against Mission Syndra in their previous game. Spoiler alert, he kind of got bopped, but then again, so did the entire team. That was on Orianna. This time he'll have something a little bit more mobile. So it goes over HKA side, and they get a quick lock-in on the Galio. That means we are very likely to see that Jarvan in the jungle.
Yeah, and it's the fact that it's probably another Galio top lane. Now, coming into Worlds, Galio was played top around 32% of the time globally. Now, since Worlds play-ins has started, he's been played top 75% of the time. So we're seeing a massive swing of more Galios being flexed into the top lane versus the mid lane, and I feel like a lot of that's actually connected to the jungle picks. We're seeing a lot more Warrior Enchantment junglers as opposed to Cinderhulk, so you need to have that tank. A lot of tanks are going up into the top lane, and Galio slots perfectly in there because he's going to be just as tanky and bring a lot more, cross-map mobility, especially when Shin is banned.
But Rampage have decided they want to answer that with a little bit more firepower. So the Rumble's actually locked in, gives them a little bit of extra damage across the board rather than just locking another tank. Of course, they've already got 2 very solid tanks. Even if the Rek'Sai does go Warrior, still kind of hard to break through that shell.
And so far, we have a very well-balanced composition. I look at Rampage, and I feel like there's a lot of what I call bridging power, and it's champions that are responsible for picking up the early game, then handing that baton off into mid-game power spikes, then handing the baton off again into late game. So it kind of starts with Lucian and Rek'Sai. It can then hand over into Rumble, and then they finally pass it over into Tristana's hand. So I felt like yesterday Rampage maybe drafted a little bit too much for the 5v5, the late game, and then got blown up before they got there. This composition is going to serve them much better to survive this very hard and aggressive lane phase from HKA.
I was about to say let's transition that a little bit to HK because it seems like they're doing what they do best, which is dominate on those laning phases. How big of a lead are they going to have to really build, though, if they still have some of those troubles around objectives? How much do they have to do to make sure that it's not a 50-50, it's a 60-40 or 70-30?
Well, then it's about focus in the mid lane. You look at the composition that they've put together. Varus, Janna, there's not a ton of opportunity to gank that early until Varus has the CC. You've got the Janna, so you're probably not going to die down there with the disengage. It's Galio up into the top into Rumble. So, you know, maybe you go up there, but it sounds much better to be like Jarvan Syndra. Yeah, that's probably where I'm going to camp.
I think mid lane is definitely going to be the place to watch at the start of this game, but Hong Kong Attitude looking to put the 2-0 onto Rampage and try to climb their way to the top of that group. Let's see if they're going to be able to do it as we load up onto Summoner's Rift for our first game of Day 4 here at the play-ins.
And again, attention about where these teams, what type of options they have into the early game. I mean, I don't need to point out the HKA combo of Jarvan and Galio. They got the classic cannonball there. That works very well in a 5v5.
And if you don't kill anybody with that, you just start dropping an R onto somebody who's still stuck in the pit with Syndra. So, yeah, it can be a bit of a wombo.
And that's the big thing. You know, Dara has to be so on point in this game simply because Syndra has so much kill pressure on any target that she wants. They don't have a true tank, especially if Rek'Sai, you know, depending on what she decides to itemize or what direction she wants to go, Syndra could have kill pressure on everyone.
That is definitely a scary thought, especially in the hands of Mission. Now, looks like we might be in for a few shenanigans. Riris is actually going to have to flash out. The rest of Rampage came out of the woodwork.
And that now means that Tussle has another big opportunity. We talked about, you know, options in the early game. Tussle can now go top, try to punish that lack of flash. He can go bottom, try to team up with the Braum and get the big hard CC there. Or he can cover his mid lane because Lucian needs to play that matchup aggressive if he wants to abuse Syndra. So offering a safety net by hanging around the mid lane, making sure that the other jungler isn't getting involved.
Yeah, God Kawhi will have his work cut out for him as well. Now, of course, Riris, no flash. Probably not the biggest deal, the fact that it's lost on the Galio, since he's not going to have as hard of a laning phase and going to be wanting to itemize that MR up against the Rumble anyways.
But he's still going to have to be pushed forward. You know, typically when you think about Galio, yes, he's against the Rumble, so he probably shouldn't be put in a bad situation. He can let that wave push into him. But the big thing about Galio is he's just the auto-push champion. Auto-push, get level 6, look for, you know, the ability to roam.
Over and over, wash, rinse, repeat. Now, God Kwai getting pretty hard leashed here as Kai Wing and Unified starting off on the red.
Yeah, and he's getting leashed on the bottom side of the map, so he does have a direct pathway towards top side, again, to try to protect his top laner. So it works two different ways. If he suspects that Tussle might make a beeline for his Galio, he can try to be around the area, maybe secure the Subtle Crab, and get more of that safety net for his top laner for that flash to come back up.
Right, now, we'll check in how the bottom starts, of course. Talked about a long range, and it's going to be difficult to really get in on the Varus and Janna early on. But Yutori Mayashi's already started by getting a little bit of harass off on Unified on the lower range Tristana to kick things off. Protected, as it were, by, you know, this very tanky front of Dara.
And it's the fact that they feel very confident that if it comes to an all-in that they're going to win. They even get the better level 2. So just abusing the Braum Tristana. Again, it's Janna Varus, so you probably shouldn't have kill pressure unless the junglers get involved. But I expect that the lane will look mostly like this for the majority of the time. That does mean, though, that Dara has to be so much more careful about placing his vision if they're going to be pushed forward. Where Tussle picking up the Scuttle Crab, again, creating that safety net for his bottom lane. If they're going to be pushed forward, he needs to make sure that he gets the vision down and keeps them safe to do so.
Yeah, it's already starting to fall according to plan, though. We saw that in the draft, they definitely have learned a few lessons that we hadn't seen them really demonstrate yesterday. But now Tussle already going into the Hong Kong Attitude jungle while the Jarvan's away. The Rek'Sai can play. And God Kwai's focusing a little more on the top side. He's even going to get spotted out by that ward in the brush.
Yeah, so we'll see if God Kwai has a good read on where Tussle is, takes Scuttle Crab, and then walks up to the enemy Krug camp, or maybe looks for a gank on Lucian right now.
Looks like he's just walking it out for the time being.
He's like, I really need this Gromp right now.
Yeah, wow. It's very important to get your levels up. Makes a jungler grow big and strong. Mission's already down to half his health, actually, so Ramane started to bully this pretty effectively with a level advantage as well. And he can be pretty fearless. Like, he's got the cleanse. If the stun comes in, he can stop it from happening, but there's not a whole lot of vision on either side of that river, so, you know, he doesn't necessarily know if God Kwai's around.
Yeah, the key thing is that he's playing towards the bottom side, making sure that he's near Tussle, making sure that he's near the lane that's pushed forward. He's got the